To bring a photo into Photoshop in order to edit it or manipulate it in some way, there's a few different ways that could be done. So here we have Photoshop open. So that's a good way to start. Open up Photoshop. And of course, you can always find that in the Windows button. If it doesn't show up, you can always search for it. Look, mine's showing up there just because it was a recent application that I used. But otherwise, you could type in Photoshop. It'll show up there. Most likely the 2023 version. Anyway, here's my Photoshop. Now, in order to bring in a photo, well, so like I said, there's different ways you can do it. One way is to just go to Open and navigate to where the photo is saved. So like this would be if you already had the photo saved on your desktop. Just let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to go to Chrome here, and let's say that I find this photo that I like of this karate person. So I right click it and choose Save Image As. And now I would designate the location desktop. And I might have some subfolders on my desktop. Maybe I'll make one, hit the new folder button and make a folder called Viscom. And then I'm going to save this karate photo. I'll call it Karate Competition. And it's being saved as a JPEG. Take note of that when you save images off the internet, because there are some file types that won't work in Photoshop. So JPEG or a GIF are good file types. Save. Now it's being saved to my desktop. So when I go back to Photoshop, I can just use the Open button, top left corner of the window, and now navigate to my desktop into my Viscom folder. There is the photo, Karate Competition, open, and there it is. So that's one way. I actually open the photo. Another way, I'm going to close that, is to actually make a canvas first. For that, I would click on the New File blue button, the top left corner. And I like to use the Art and Illustration tab at the top. Then I'm going to change my units of measure from pixels to inches and set some sort of size, like maybe just 8 by 10, 8 by 10 inches, which is kind of a common portrait size for large photos. I'll leave the resolution at 300. I'm going to leave my color mode as RGB. So I'm pretty much done. I'm going to click create. I guess I could give it a title. So maybe I'll just call this Karate Cutouts. Create. Now I have a canvas, white space. Okay, so how do I get images on it? Well, maybe I'm just surfing the net and I come across an image that I like maybe this one. And so I right click, and this time I don't even have to save it. I can just copy it, copy image, go back to Photoshop, and I can paste it by either using Control V on my keyboard, or I could go to the edit button in the top menu and choose paste. Now, remember that other method where I actually brought in a photo that I saved? I can do that here too, but it's a little bit of a different method. So instead of choosing File Open, I choose File Place Embedded, because what I want to do is I want to place the image that I have saved on my computer onto this workspace. So File Place Embedded, navigate to my folder. So remember that was Desktop, Viscom. There's that Karate Competition image. Double click and there it is. Now, let me take this opportunity to just point a couple of things out. I just double clicked that, by the way, to remove the selection around it. But I want you to notice that there's a layers panel down the right side of my workspace. And whenever you add an image to your workspace, it will be placed on a new individual layer. So just think of it as like a sandwich, and like the top layer is the most visible one. So my Karate Competition image is at the top, And so if I click and drag, that's the layer that's going to move. If I want, or that's the image that's going to move, and it's because it's on that layer, and it's because I'm on that layer. So like, look in the layers panel, that's the layer that's highlighted. So that's the image that's going to move, or that's the layer that will be manipulated when I click and drag. If I want to move the image that's on the middle layer here, I would have to select it in my layers panel, and now that's the image that will move. So in other words, even if I click on the karate competition image, it won't move. It'll be this other image that moves because that's the layer that I have selected. Right now, the karate competition image is on top of the other image. If I want to move the other image on top, maybe I better title that image so I don't just calling it other image. So I can right click on the layer, or sorry, not right click, double click on the layer, on the words where it says layer 1. So I double click with my left mouse button on that layer and rename it karate pose. Now, if I just click on that layer, hold my left mouse button down and drag up, I will move that image on top. So again, just think in terms of layers. What's on top, what's underneath. How about resizing images? If I want to resize the karate pose image, I have to make sure I'm on that layer. On my keyboard, I hit Control T until I have it selected, and I know it's selected because I have the selection points indicated with that blue line around the image. Now I'll hold my Shift key down, grab a corner, and I can resize the image. When I'm satisfied, I just simply double click to release the selection. What's one nice thing about these layers is if you want to hide them, all you have to do is click on the little eye that's to the left of the layer in the layers panel, and the image that's on that layer will disappear. It's still there, it's just that I turned it off. So if I want to resize karate competition, I have to select it in the layers panel, Control T, and then resize it. Notice how the karate competition layer, sorry, wait a minute. Before I go on, I want to make sure that this is really clear. So Control T to select the image on the layer, and then hold down the Shift key, use a corner anchor point to resize the image. But then, this is the part I kind of breezed over. How do you release it? How do you get it back to, not being selected? Just double click anywhere in the image, and that'll get rid of the selection box. Okay. But back to what I was saying, if you notice on the layers panel, the karate competition layer has this funny little icon on it. That's because it's not being recognized as a raster image yet. And so I have to right click that layer and choose rasterize layer. And this is important because some of the features that you might want to use in Photoshop will not work until the image that you brought in is rasterized. Okay, notice though that the karate pose image that I copy and pasted into Photoshop is already rasterized, but the one that I inserted, the karate competition image that I inserted with the file place embedded method, is needed to be rasterized. So just take note of that. Okay, so I could turn my karate pose image back on, and then remember, you have to be on the layer in order to move the image that's on the layer. So you can load up one canvas or one workspace with multiple images, and then you turn some off while you work on others. So that's a couple different ways to bring imagery into Photoshop. Hiya!